You suddenly drop into a room full of 12 highly trained armed guards. Your eyes dart around as you quickly take mental note of the positions of all the men in the room, what kind of weapons they're carrying, and what useful items you have within reach. Well shit, looks like you're outgunned and surrounded. You're gonna need a plan to survive. So in a split second, your brain takes all the information that it's gathered of your less than ideal situation. And like a supercomputer that's neglected to update its morality drivers, your brain comes up with a ruthlessly creative plan to create 12 new widows. Before anyone in the room has a chance to react, your legs fire you in the direction of the first guard, as your body flawlessly executes the plan that your brain created only seconds ago. After 120 seconds, the only two things that can be heard in the room is your heart pounding and the sound of the local life insurance industry collapsing. That's a day in the life of the most deadly assassin in the history of the DC universe, Deathstroke, aka Slade Wilson. He's a great example of the kind of deadly efficiency that can be achieved when peak athleticism comes together with a razor-sharp, strategic mind. But if Deathstroke didn't have access to the comic book version of the Liver King's $15,000 a month steroid stack that turned him into a super soldier, then how would he have to train in real life to develop not only his elite level athletic performance, but also his impressive mental abilities? Well, I'm going to be answering all those questions, and then I'm going to be giving you a full Deathstroke training plan that you can follow yourself, so you too can become a jacked machine that's built for peak physical and mental performance. Just promise me that once you get there, you'll try to break a few less laws and a few less bones than Deathstroke does. To build an elite warrior like Slade Wilson, better known by his alias Deathstroke, you need to start from the ground up. So we'll be breaking down Deathstroke's training into 4 phases. 1. General conditioning. 2. Physique development and injury resilience. 3. Athletic development, and Phase 4, skill development and mental training. Let's break these down one at a time. Phase 1 is general conditioning, and the goal of this phase is to build a really strong foundation of fitness and to develop the prerequisite levels of cardiovascular conditioning, muscular endurance, flexibility, and resilience to discomfort, aka not being a needed to take on the more advanced training that's to come later in the program without snapping your shit up and having to pay a visit to Bane the chiropractor. Slade Wilson himself went through this exact kind of general conditioning phase when he joined the US Army at the age of 16 during the time of the Vietnam War and underwent basic training, which during the Vietnam War was 8 weeks long, and the physical training component of which consisted of hours on hours of running, marching, crawling, and fighting, along with loads of bodyweight resistance training like push-ups, pull-ups, sit-ups, and vigorous masturbation. The goal of the general conditioning phase is to increase your body's work capacity, which is essentially how much training and stress your body can handle and recover from at any given time. Because as you're going to learn in this video, one has to do a ton of training to become a highly skilled assassin who can stand toe-to-toe with everybody's favorite Cairo-Terra themed sad boy orphan. So if your cardiovascular conditioning is so shit that you can't even hit the heavy bag for a few minutes without puking your guts out, or if your muscular endurance is so lacking that after only a few sets of heavy squats, you need to Amazon Prime yourself some new legs, then you're going to struggle with this whole process. That's why the general conditioning phase is so important. To save time, I'll be laying out exactly what this phase should look like in the program at the end of the video. So now let's move on to phase 2. But before we do, I'm thinking about starting a series of videos called Becoming Batman, where I break down all the different aspects of what it would take to become Batman in real life. If that sounds like something you'd be interested in, leave this video a like and comment Becoming Batman down below. Thanks guys. Okay, phase 2, physique development and injury resilience. In case you haven't noticed, Deathstroke is jacked. So of course, his real life training plan is going to need to include a solid amount of hypertrophy, aka muscle building work, so he can achieve his peak DILF status in real life. But of course, a real life Slade Wilson wouldn't have access to the same super soldier trenbolone cocktail that gave him his superhuman level of muscle mass, strength, and intelligence in the comics. So for his real life training plan, he'll have to rely on more conventional methods to achieve peak performance, such as creating his own cocktail for peak physical and mental performance, by taking as much testosterone and Adderall as his doctor will legally prescribe him. But for real, this phase will consist of primarily high volume functional bodybuilding training. Think things like barbell squats, Romanian deadlifts, dumbbell overhead press, and weighted pull-ups, all performed in the 6 to 15 rep range. But don't get it twisted, this type of hypertrophy work isn't just important for building big, succulent, juicy muscles that he can show off. Hypertrophy training is incredibly important in the context of athletic development for a ton of reasons, and here are 4 of the main ones. Number 1, building muscle mass gives you the potential for higher levels of force output when these newly formed muscles are trained explosively, as they will be in phase 3. Number 2, Enhanced levels of muscle mass can help reduce the risk of bone fractures and joint injuries during combat or contact sports, as they serve as a kind of armor for the bones and joints that they cover. On top of this, growing and strengthening muscles around joints provides better joint stability. Number 3, hypertrophy training has an extremely beneficial effect on ligaments, tendons, and bones, enhancing their strength and resilience, which not only aids in peak performance, but also reduces the risk of sports-related injuries. And number 4, having a large amount of muscle mass gives you a non-violent alternative to armed combat, as you can simply seduce your opponents into submission. It's a very helpful skill to have. So you get it by now. Muscle equals good. And like I said before, you can get the full details of this phase in the full free training plan at the end of the video. Now on to the second most exciting phase in this program, Phase 3, Athletic Development. Now that Slade Wilson has built a well-conditioned muscular body that is resistant to injury, it's time to teach that body how to move explosively. But before he can do that, he's going to have to take one of the most important steps that will turn him from the military major named Slade Wilson to the deadly assassin named Deathstroke. And that step is getting his very own supersuit with the help of today's sponsor, SuperX. They create the world's highest quality and most badass superhero-inspired workout gear on the market. They've got designs based off all your favorite superheroes and villains, plus official collaborations with big brands like the Power Rangers. All of their products are super high quality and well made, but to keep the quality high, all their designs are made in very limited runs, so if you see something you like, you need to act fast before they sell out. Go check them out by clicking the link down below in the description, and then use code DEMERCE for a discount at checkout, and so they know I sent you. Okay, back to the training. So like I said before, Phase 3 is all about taking the muscular body that we built in Phase 2 and unlocking its athletic potential. So with that goal in mind, this phase will consist of 5 main components: absolute strength training, explosive power work, agility training, balance training, and of course, a ton of high-level cardiovascular conditioning. Now, there is a lot that goes into developing an athlete, and each one of these categories could be a full video in of itself. So because of this, I'm not going to go into too much detail here, but again, you can find more in the full program. And now onto the fourth and most exciting phase of this program, skill development and mental training. Up to this point, this whole program has been focused on building Deathstroke a body that's capable of elite performance. But Deathstroke is an assassin. He isn't an athlete. Unless you consider killing people for money a sport, in which case, he's Tom fucking Brady. Anyways, Phases 1 to 3 were all about maxing out Deathstroke's physical stats, but Phase 4 is all about actually putting those stats to work and creating the ultimate assassin. While this is listed as the final phase in this program, I just structured things this way to make it easier to present. In reality, Deathstroke would be setting aside time to hone his assassin-specific skills, like fighting, shooting, slashing, and spending time working on his mental game during each of the first 3 phases. As Deathstroke is moving through these phases, he would schedule his training in a similar way to how an off-season athlete would, with 3 to 4 in-gym training sessions a week that would be specific to the goal of whatever training phase he's currently in. And then you would also have 3 to 4 skill development sessions a week that would solely be focused on developing him as an assassin. This leads us into one of the most interesting things about Deathstroke's character, and that's the fact that the super soldier serum that he took didn't just supercharge his body, but it also turned his brain into a ruthlessly efficient combat computer, making him 9 times smarter than the average person. This allows him to assess a situation, strategize the most efficient plan of attack, and begin flawlessly executing his plan all in a blink of an eye, allowing him to take down opponents much stronger and faster than himself. Now, unfortunately, the public doesn't have access to super brain steroids that'll make you 10 times smarter than you currently are. Not because they don't exist or anything, but because Mr. Musk is hoarding them all for himself. Hashtag eat the rich, am I right, fellas? So anyways, poor people like us and a real-life Deathstroke would need to find another way of supercharging our brains to maximize our combat-specific performance. And one of the best ways of doing this is by improving something called our working memory. Working memory is a component of short-term memory that allows us to hold, process, and manipulate information temporarily in our minds. For Deathstroke, an enhanced working memory would be crucial in combat scenarios. It would enable him to track multiple opponents, remember their moves, and predict their next actions, all while formulating and adjusting strategies on the fly. From the research that's available, it seems that the best ways of improving working memory all involve dual tasks, which are tasks that require you to perform 2 or more actions at the same time. For example, one game which has been widely used to improve working memory is the dual end-back task. which is a cognitive exercise where participants monitor and recall both visual and auditory stimuli from a specific number of steps earlier in a sequence. As for working memory training strategies that are more specific to the day-to-day demands of being Deathstroke, multiple studies have shown that proprioceptively demanding balancing exercises like squats on a Bosu ball, crawling along beams, running barefoot, and climbing trees all helped improve working memory in healthy adults. Along with this, regular team sports have also been shown to be great in improving one's working memory as well. So it could be advantageous for a real-life Deathstroke to include some drills into his skill training days where he balances on beams while deflecting projectiles with his swords, or he could even solve math problems in his head while doing target practice with his gun. Just a couple of ideas. Okay, so now you can download the full free 3-phase Deathstroke training plan using the link down below. All I ask is you leave this video a like, subscribe, and let me know who I should cover next. Now go check out my video on how Spider-Man 2099 would train in real life, and I'll see you there.